Okay, section 2.4, complex numbers. And what a complex number is a combination of real and imaginary numbers. So something like the real number 5 plus 2i. And just as a recall, I stands for the square root of -1. Remember, we cannot do the square root of negatives, so we'll use the letter I to stand in for those imaginary numbers. And just as a review, I squared, if we square a square root, we do get -1. So that's going to come in handy in a lot of the problems that we do. I squared equals -1. And so this problem is just really talking about what we just said here. If we look at one of the examples, -5 plus the square root of -9, we can break this down. Instead of saying that, we can say the square root of 9 is 3, and we'll deal with the negative part by saying it's 3i. Okay? So that's what we're dealing with. Real numbers, normal, negative, and positives, and then imaginaries, which are the square roots of negatives. Okay? And so these are all, when you combine the two, you get complex numbers, is just what this chart is telling us here. Alright, so for our first section, we're going to do some operations with complex numbers. We're going to be able to add and subtract them. And the key here is that we're going to add all the real numbers together and then add all the imaginary numbers together. So we'll just keep them kind of like doing like terms. So let's do some examples here. 4 plus 7i plus 1 minus 6i. I'm going to rearrange this and just group all of the real numbers together from here and here, and then we'll add all of the imaginary numbers together, 7i and -6i. We end up with 5 from the reals, and we end up with 1i, or just I, from the imaginary section. All right, moving right along, if we take a look at part B, we're going to have 1 minus 4, and we're also going to have 2i minus 2i, and so our final section, final answer here is -3 plus 0i, or just -3. Notice here that I put a plus in between, even though it's a minus problem. What this plus down here is really saying is that we're talking about real numbers and imaginary numbers. And the minus is dealt with twice, once for the real numbers and once for the imaginaries. All right, so I think you get the idea here. Let's just wrap this up. Let's talk about just the real numbers first. If we were to rearrange this, that's a +2, and then we have -2. So I've identified all the real numbers and put them together. We say the plus in here to say we're also going to deal with imaginary numbers, and let's put them all in here. We've got 3i. We're going to say minus a positive, so that's -3i. And we're going to minus another positive, minus 5i. 2 minus 2 is 0. And we ended up with minus 5i, or just minus 5i. Last problem to look at. Let's look at all the reals first. I see 3, 4, and -7. And let's deal with the imaginaries. I see 2i, I see -i, and I see one more -i. So we're going to have 3 plus 4 is 7, minus 7 is 0, and 2 minus 1 is 0i. So our answer here would just be 0. All right, go ahead and try one on your own. See if you can do problem 21. All right, the correct answer on 21 would be 7 plus 3, which is 10, plus I minus 4i, which is minus 3i. 10 minus 3i is your correct solution.